Attachment on the pod. All right, we're going to pick back up in our book reading, The Pilgrims Progress. We're in part 2. True, there are, by the direction of the lawgiver, certain good and substantial steps, placed even through the very midst of this slough. But at such time as this place doth much spew out its filth, as it doth against change of weather, these steps are hardly seen, or if they be, men through the dizziness of their heads step besides, and then they are bemired to purpose, notwithstanding the steps be there, but the ground is good when they are once got in at the gate. Now I saw in my dream that by this time Pliable was got home to his house again. So his neighbors came to visit him, and some of them called him wise man for coming back, and some called him fool for hazarding himself with Christian. Others again did mock at his cowardliness, saying, surely since you began to venture, I would not have been so base to have given out for a few difficulties. So Pliable sat sneaking among them. But at last he got more confidence, and then they all turned their tails and began to deride poor Christian behind his back, and thus much concerning Pliable. Now, as Christian was walking solitary by himself, he espied one afar off coming crossing over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way of each other. The gentleman's name that met him was Mr. Worldly Wiseman. He dwelt in the town of Carnal Policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. This man then meeting with Christian and having some inkling of him, for Christian's setting forth from the city of destruction was much noised abroad, not only in the town where he dwelt, but also it began to be the town talk in some other places. Master Worldly Wiseman, therefore, having some guess of him, by beholding his laborious going, by observing his sighs and groans, and the like, began thus to enter into some talk with Christian. World, how now, good fellow, whither away after this burdened manner? Christian, a burdened manner indeed, as ever I think poor creature had, and whereas you ask me whither away, I tell you, sir, I am going to yonder wicket gate before me, for there, as I am informed, I shall be put into a way to be rid of my heavy burden. World, hast thou a wife and children? Christian, yes, but I am so laden with this burden that I cannot take that pleasure in them as formerly. Methinks I am as if I had none. World, wilt thou hearken to me if I give thee counsel? Christian, if it be good, I will, for I stand in need of good counsel. World, I would advise thee then that thou with all speed get thyself rid of thy burden, for thou wilt never be settled in thy mind till then, nor canst thou enjoy the benefits of the blessing which God hath bestowed upon thee till then. Christian, that is that which I seek for, even to be rid of this heavy burden. But get it off myself I cannot, nor is there any man in our country that can take it off my shoulders. Therefore am I going this way, as I told you, that I may be rid of my burden. World, who bid thee go this way to be rid of thy burden? Christian, a man that appeared to me to be a very great and honorable person. His name, as I remember, is Evangelist. World, I beshrew him for his counsel. There is not a more dangerous and troublesome way in the world than is that which unto which he hath directed thee, and that thou shalt find if thou wilt be ruled by his counsel. Thou hast met with something, as I perceive already, for I see the dirt of the slough of despond is upon thee. But that slough is the beginning of the sorrows that do attend those that go on in that way. Hear me, I am older than thou. Thou art like to meet with in the way with which goest wearisomeness, painfulness, hunger, perils, nakedness, sword, lions, dragons, darkness, and in a word, death and whatnot. These things are certainly true, having been confirmed by many testimonies. And why should a man so carelessly cast away himself by giving heed to a stranger? Christian. Why, sir, this burden upon my back is more terrible to me than all these things which thou hast mentioned. Nay, methinks I care not what I meet with in the way, so be I can also meet with deliverance from my burden. World. How camest thou by thy burden at first? Christian. By reading this book in my hand. World. I thought so. And it has happened unto thee as to other weak men, who meddling with things too high for them, do suddenly fall into thy distractions, which distractions do not only unman men, as thine I perceive has done thee, but they run them upon desperate ventures to obtain they know not what. Christian, I know not what I would obtain. It is ease for my heavy burden. World, but why wilt thou seek for ease this way, seeing so many dangers attended? Especially since, hadst thou but patience to hear me, I could direct thee to the obtaining of what thou desirest, without the dangers that thou in this way wilt run thyself into. Yea, and the remedy is at hand. Besides, I will add that instead of those dangers, thou shalt meet with much safety, friendship, and content. Christian, pray, sir, open the secret to me. World, why, in yonder village, the village is named Morality. There dwelleth a gentleman whose name is Legality, a very judicious man, and a man of very good name, that has skill to help men off with such burdens as thine are from their shoulders. Yea, to my knowledge, he have done a great deal of good this way. Ah, and besides, he hath skill to cure those that are somewhat crazed in their wits with their burdens. To him, as I said, thou mayest go and be helped presently. His house is not quite a mile from this place, and if he should not be home himself, he hath a pretty young man to his son, whose name is Civility, that can do it to speak on as well as the old gentleman himself. There, I say, thou mayest be eased of thy burden, and if thou art not minded to go back to thy former habitation, as indeed I would not wish thee, thou mayest send for thy wife and children to thee in this village, where there are houses now stand empty, one of which thou mayest have at a reasonable rate. Provision is also cheap and good, and that which will make thy life the more happy is, to be sure, there thou shalt live by honest neighbors in credit and good fashion. Excuse me. Now was Christian somewhat at a stand, but presently he concluded, if this be true which this gentleman hath said, my wisest course is to take his advice. And with that he thus farther spoke. Christian, sir, which is my way to this honest man's house? World, do you see yonder high hill? Christian, yes, very well. World, by that hill you must go, and the first house you come at is his. So Christian turned out of his way to go to Mr. Legality's house for help. But behold, when he was got now hard by the hill, it seemed so high, and also that side of it that was next, the wayside, did hang so much over, that Christian was afraid to venture further, lest the hill should fall on his head. Wherefore there he stood still, and he wot not what to do. Also his burden now seemed heavier to him than while he was in his way. There came also flashes of fire out of the hill that made Christian afraid that he should be burned. Here, therefore, he sweat and did quake for fear. And this right here is a little insert. When Christians unto carnal men give ear, out of their where they go, and pay for the dear, for master worldly wise men can but show a saint the way to bondage and to woe. Back to the book. And now he began to be sorry that he had taken Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel, and with that he saw Evangelist coming to meet him, at the sight also of whom he began to blush for shame. So Evangelist drew nearer and nearer. Coming up to him, he looked upon him with a severe and dreadful countenance, and thus began to reason with Christian. Evangelist, What dost thou here, Christian? Said he. At which words Christian knew not what to answer, wherefore at present he stood speechless before him. Then said Evangelist farther, Art not thou the man that I found crying without the walls of the city of destruction? Christian, yes, dear sir, I am the man. Evangelist, did not I direct thee the way to the little wicket gate? Christian, yes, dear sir, said Christian. Evangelist, how is it then that thou art so quickly turned aside? For thou art now come out of the way. Christian, I met with a gentleman so soon as I had gotten over the slough of despond, who persuaded me that I might, in the village before me, find a man that could take off my burden. Evangelist, what was he? Christian, he looked like a gentleman and talked much to me and got me to last to yield. So I came hither. But when I beheld this hill and how it hangs over the way, I suddenly made a stand lest it should fall on my head. Evangelist, what said that gentleman to you? Christian, why, he asked me whither I was going, and I told him. Evangelist, and what said he then? Christian, he asked me if I had a family, and I told him, but said I am so loaded with the burden that is on my back that I cannot take pleasure in them as formerly. Evangelist, and what said he then? Christian, he bid me with speed get rid of my burden, and I told him 'twas ease that I sought, and said I am therefore going to yonder gate to receive further direction how I may get to the place of deliverance. So he said that he would show me a better way, and short, not so attended with difficulties as the way. Sir, that thou set me, which way, said he, will direct you to a gentleman's house that hath skill to take off these burdens. So I believed him, and turned out of that way into this, if haply I might be soon eased of my burden. But when I came to this place and beheld these things as they are, I stopped for fear, as I said, of danger, but now know not what to do. Evangelist. Then said Evangelist, Stand still a little, that I may shew thee the words of God. So we stood trembling. Then said Evangelist, See that ye refuse not him that speaketh, for if they escape not who refused him that spake on earth, much more shall not we escape if we turn away from him that speaketh from heaven. He said, Therefore now the just shall live by faith. But if any man draws back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. He also did thus apply, Thou art the man that art running into this misery. Thou hast begun to reject the counsel of the Most High, and to draw back thy foot from the way of peace, even almost to the hazarding of thy perdition. Then Christian fell down at his foot as dead, crying, Woe is me, for I am undone. At the sight of which Evangelist caught him by the right hand, saying, All manner of sin and blasphemies shall be forgiven unto men. Be not faithless, but believing. Then did Christian again a little revive, and stood up trembling, as at first before Evangelist. Then Evangelist proceeded, saying, Give more earnest heed to the things that I shall tell thee of. I will now show thee who it was that deluded thee, and who it was also to whom he sent thee. The man that met thee is one worldly wise man, and rightly is he so called, partly because he savoreth only the doctrine of this world. Therefore he always goes to the town of morality to church, and partly because he loveth that doctrine best, for it saveth him from the cross, and because he is of this carnal temper, therefore he seeketh to prevent my ways, though right. Now there are three things in this man's counsel that thou must utterly abhor. 1. His turning thee out of the way. 2. His laboring to render the cross odious to thee. 3. And his setting thy feet in that way that leadeth unto the administration of death. First, thou must abhor his turning thee out of the way, yea, and thine own consenting thereto, because this is to reject the counsel of God for the sake of the counsel of a worldly wise man. The Lord says, strive to enter in at the strait gate, the gate to which I sent thee. For strait is the gate that leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. From this little wicket gate, and from the way thereto, hath this wicked man turned thee to the bringing of thee almost to destruction. Hate therefore his turning thee out of the way, and abhor thyself for hearkening to him. Secondly, thou must abhor his laboring to render the cross odious unto thee, for thou art to prefer it before the treasures of Egypt. Besides, the King of glory hath told thee that he who will save his life shall lose it, and he that comes after him and hates not his father and mother and wife and children and brethren and sister, yea, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. I say therefore a man to labor to persuade thee that shall be thy death, without which the truth hath said, thou canst not have eternal life. This doctrine thou must abhor. Thirdly, thou must hate his setting of thy feet in the way that leadeth to the ministration of death. And for this thou must consider to whom he sent thee, and also how unable that person was to deliver thee from thy burden. He too thou was sent for ease, being by name Legality, is the son of the bondwoman, which now is and is in bondage with her children, and is in a mystery this Mount Sinai, which thou hast feared, will fall on thy head. For if she with her children are in bondage, how canst thou expect by them to be made free? This legality, therefore, is not able to set thee free from thy burden. No man was ever as yet ever rid of his burden by him. No, nor ever is like to be. Ye cannot be justified by the works of the law, for by the deeds of the law no man living can be rid of his burden. Therefore, Mr. Worldly Wiseman is an alien, and Mr. Legality a cheat, and for his son's civility, notwithstanding his simpering looks, he is but a hypocrite, and cannot help thee. Believe me, there is nothing in all this noise that thou hast heard of this sottish man, but it is designed to beguile thee of thy salvation, by turning thee from the way in which I had set thee. After this, Evangelist called aloud to the heavens for confirmation of what he had said. And with that there came words and fire out of the mountain under which Christian stood, that made the hair of his flesh stand. The words were thus pronounced: as many as are the works of the law are under the curse. For it is written, cursed is every one that continueth not in all things which are written in the book of the law to do them. Now Christian looked for nothing but death, and began to cry out lamentably, even cursing the time in which he met with Mr. Worldly Wiseman, still calling himself 1,000 fools for hearkening to his counsel. He also was greatly ashamed to think that this gentleman's arguments, flowing only from the flesh, should have that prevaliancy with him as to cause him to forsake the right way. This done, he applied himself again to Evangelist in words and sense as follows. Christian: Sir, what think you? Is there hopes? May I now go back and go up to the wicket gate? Shall I not be abandoned for this, and sent back from thence ashamed? I am sorry I have hearkened to this man's counsel, but may my sin be forgiven? Evangelist: Then said Evangelist to him, thy sin is very great, for by it thou hast committed two evils. Thou hast forsaken the way that is good, to tread in forbidden paths, yet will the man at the gate receive thee, for he has good will for men. Only said he, take heed that thou turn not aside again, lest thou perish from the way, when his wrath is kindled but a little. Then did Christian address himself to go back, and Evangelist, after he had kissed him, gave him one smile, and bid him Godspeed. So he went on with haste, neither spake he to any man by the way, nor if any man asked him, would he vouchsafe them an answer. He went like one that was all the while treading on forbidden ground, and could by no means think himself safe, till again he was got into the way, which he left to follow Mr. Worldly Wiseman's counsel. So in process of time, Christian got up to the gate. Now over the gate there was written, "Knock, and it shall be opened to you." And then here's a little insert. "He that will enter in must first without stand, knocking at the gate, nor need he doubt. That is a knocker, but to enter in, for God can love him and forgive his sin." He knocked therefore more than once or twice, saying, "May I now enter here? Will he within open to sorry me, though I have been an undeserving rebel? Then shall I not fail to sing his lasting praise on high." At last there came a grave person to the gate named Goodwill, who asked who was there, and whence he came, and what he would have. Christian: "Here is a poor burdened sinner. I come from the city of destruction, but am going to Mount Sion, that I may be delivered from the wrath to come. I would therefore, sir, since I am informed that by this gate is the way thither, now if you are willing to let me in." Goodwill: "I am willing with all my heart," said he, and with that he opened the gate. So when Christian was stepping in, the other gave him a pull. Then said Christian, "What means that?" The other told him, "A little distance from this gate there is erected a strong castle, of which Beelzebub is the captain. From thence both he and they that are with him shoot arrows at those who come up to this gate. If happily they may die before they can enter in." Then said Christian, "I rejoice and tremble." So when he was got in, the man of the gate asked him who directed him thither. Christian: "Evangelist bid me come hither and knock, as I did, and he said that you, sir, would tell me what I must do." Goodwill: "An open door is set before thee, and no man can shut it." Christian: "Now I begin to reap the benefits of my hazards." Goodwill: "But how is it that you came alone?" Christian: "But none of my neighbors saw their danger as I saw mine." Goodwill: "Did any of them know of your coming?" Christian: "Yes, my wife and children saw me at the first and called after me to turn again. Also some of my neighbors stood crying and calling after me to return, but I put my fingers in my ears and so came on my way." Goodwill: "But did none of them follow you to persuade you to go back?" Christian: "Yes, both Obstinate and Pliable. But when they saw that they could not prevail, Obstinate went railing back, but Pliable came with me a little way." Goodwill: "But why did he not come through?" Christian: "We indeed came both together until we came to the slough of despond, into the which we also suddenly fell. And then was my neighbor, Pliable, discouraged, and would not adventure further. Wherefore, getting out again on that side next to his own house, he told me I should possess the brave country alone for him. So he went his way, and I came mine, he after Obstinance, and I to this gate." Goodwill: "Then said Goodwill, Alas, poor man, is the celestial glory of so small esteem with him that he counteth it not worth running the hazards of a few difficulties to obtain it?" Christian: "Truly," said Christian, "I have said the truth of Pliable, and if I should also say all the truth of myself, it will appear there is no betterment betwixt him and myself. 'Tis true he went back to his own house, but I also turned aside to go in the way of death, being persuaded thereto by the carnal arguments of one Mr. Worldly Wiseman." Goodwill: "Oh, did he light upon you? What he would have had you sought for ease at the hands of Mr. Legality? They are both of them very cheat. But did you take his counsel?" Christian: "Yes, as far as I durst. I went to find out Mr. Legality until I thought that the mountain that stands by his house would have fallen upon my head. Wherefore there I was forced to stop." Goodwill: "That mountain has been the death of many, and will be the death of many more. 'Tis will you escaped being by it dashed in pieces." Christian: "Why truly I do not know what had become of me there, had not Evangelist happily met me again, as I was musing in the midst of my dumps. But 'twas God's mercy that he came to me again, for else I had never come thither. But now I am come, such a one as I am, more fit indeed for death by that mountain than thus to stand talking with my Lord. But oh, what a favor is this to me, that yet I am admitted entrance here. Goodwill. We make no objections against any, notwithstanding all that they have done before they come hither. They in no wise are cast out, and therefore, good Christian, come a little way with me, and I will teach thee about the way thou must go. Look before thee. Dost thou see this narrow way? That in the way thou must go. It was cast up by the patriarchs, prophets, Christ, and his apostles, and it is as straight as a rule can make it. This is the way thou must go. Christian. But said Christian, is there no turnings nor windings by which a stranger may lose the way? Goodwill, yes, there are many ways, but down upon this, and they are crooked and wide. But thus thou mayest distinguish the right from the wrong, the right only being straight and narrow. Then I saw in my dream that Christian asked him further if he could not help him off with his burden that was upon his back, for as yet he had not got rid thereof, nor could he by any means get it off without help. He told him, as to thy burden, be content to bear it until thou comest to the place of deliverance, for there it will fall from thy back itself. Then Christian began to gird up his loins and to address himself to his journey. So the other told him that by that he was gone some distance from the gate, he would come at the house of the interpreter, at whose door he would knock, and he would show him excellent things. Then Christian took his leave of his friend, and he again bid him Godspeed. Then he went on till he came at the house of the interpreter, where he knocked over and over. At last one came to the door and asked who was there. Christian, sir, here is a traveler who was bid by an acquaintance of the good man of this house to call here for my profit. I would therefore speak with the master of the house. So he called for the master of the house, who after a little time came to Christian and asked him what he would have. Christian, sir, said Christian, I am a man that am come from the city of destruction, and am going to the Mount Zion. And I was told by the man that stands at the gate at the head of this way, that if I called here, you would shew me excellent things, such as would be a help to me in my journey. Interpreter. Then said the interpreter, come in, and I will show thee that which be profitable to thee. All right. So he commanded his man to light the candle and bid Christian follow him. So he had him into a private room and bid his man open a door, the which, when he had done, Christian saw the picture of a very grave person hang upon the wall, and this was the fashion of it. It had eyes lifted up to heaven, the best of books in his hand. The law of truth was written upon his lips. The world was behind his back. It stood as if it pleased with men. It stood as if it pleaded with men, and a crown of gold did hang over his head. Christian. Then said Christian, what means this? Interpreter. The man whose picture this is one of 1,000. He can begat children, travail and birth with children, and nurse them himself when they are born. And whereas thou seest him with his eyes lift up to heaven, the best of books in his hand, and the law of truth writ on his lips, it is to shew thee that his work is to know and unfold the dark things to sinners, even as also thou seest him stand as if he pleaded with men. And whereas thou seest the world as cast behind him, that a crown hangs over his head, that is to shew thee that slighting and despising the things that are present for the love that he hath to his master's service, he is sure in the world that comes next to have glory for his reward. Now, said the interpreter, I have shewed thee this picture first, because the man whose picture this is the only man whom the Lord of the place whither thou art going hath authorized to be thy guide in all difficult places thou mayest meet with in the way. Wherefore take heed to what I have showed thee, and bear well in thy mind that thou hast seen, lest in thy journey thou meet with some that pretend to lead thee right, but their way goes down to death. Then he took him by the hand and led him into a very large parlor that was full of dust, because never swept, the which after he had reviewed a little while, the interpreter called for a man to sweep. Now, when he began to sweep, the dust began so abundantly to fly about that Christian had almost therewith been choked. Then said the interpreter to a damsel that stood by, Bring hither the water and sprinkle the room. The which when she had done, it was swept and cleaned with pleasure. Christian. Then said Christian, What means this? Interpreter. The interpreter answered, This parlor is the heart of a man that was never sanctified by the sweet grace of the gospel. The dust is his original sin and inward corruptions that have defiled the whole man. He that began to sweep at first is the law, but she that brought water and did sprinkle it is the gospel. Now, whereas thou sawest that so soon as the first began to sweep, the dust did so fly about that room, by him could not be cleansed, but that thou wast almost choked therewith. This is to shew thee that the law, instead of cleansing the heart by its working from sin, doth revive, but strength into, and increase it in the soul, even as it doth discover and forbid it, for it doth not give power to subdue. Again, as thou sawest the damsel sprinkle the room with water, upon which it was cleansed with pleasure, there is to shew thee that when the gospel comes in the sweet and precious influences thereof to the heart, then I say, even as thou sawest the damsel lay the dust by the sprinkling the floor with water, so is sin vanquished and subdued, and the soul made clean through the faith of it, and consequently fit for the King of glory to inhabit. I saw, moreover, in my dream that the interpreter took him by the hand and had him into a little room, where sat two little children, each one in his chair. The name of the eldest was Passion, and the name of the other Patience. Passion seemed to be so discontent, but Patience was very quiet. Then Christian asked, What is the reason of this discontent of Passion? The interpreter answered, The governor of them would have him stay for his best things till the beginning of the next year, but he will have all now. But Patience is willing to wait. Then I saw that one came to Passion and brought him a bag of treasure and poured it down at his feet, the which he took up and rejoiced therein, and withal laughed Patient to scorn. But I beheld but a while, and he had lavished all away, and had nothing left but rags. Christian. Then said Christian to the interpreter, Expound this matter more fully to me. Interpreter. So he said, These two lads are figures, Passion, the men of this world, and Patience, the men of that which is to come. For as here thou seest, Passion will have all now this year. That is to say, in this world. So are the men of this world. They must have all their good things now. They cannot stay till next year, that is, until the next world, for their portion of good. That proverb, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, is one of more authority with them than are all the divine testimonies of the good of the world to come. But as thou sawest that he had quickly lavished all away, and had presently left him nothing but rags, so will it be with all such men at the end of the world. Christian. Then said Christian, Now I see that Patience has the best wisdom, and that upon many accounts, one, because he stays for the best things, two, and also because he will have the glory of his when the other has nothing but rags. Interpreter. Nay, you may add another, to wit, The glory of the next world will never wear out, but these are suddenly gone. Therefore, passion had not so much reason to laugh at patience, because he had his good things first, as patience will have to laugh at passion, because he had his best things last. For first must give place to last, because last have his time to come. But last gives place to nothing, for there is not another to succeed. He therefore that hath his portion first must needs have a time to spend it, but he that hath his portion last must have it lastingly. Therefore it is said of Dives, in thy lifetime thou receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. Christian, then I perceive 'tis not best to covet things that are now, but to wait for things to come. Interpreter, you say truth, for the things which are seen are temporal, but the things that are not seen are eternal. But though this be so, yet since things present and our fleshly appetite are such near neighbors one to another, and again, because things to come in carnal sense are such strangers one to another, therefore it is that the first of these so suddenly fell into enmity, and that the distance is so continued between the second. Then I saw in my dream that the interpreter took Christian by the hand and led him into a place where there was a fire burning against the wall, and one standing by it, always casting much water upon it to quench it. Yet did the fire burn higher and hotter. Then said Christian, what means this? The interpreter answered, this fire is the work of grace that is wrought in the heart. He that casts water upon it to extinguish it and put it out is the devil. But in that thou seest the fire, notwithstanding, burn higher and hotter, thou shalt also see the reason of that. So he had asked him about to the backside of the wall, where he saw a man with a vessel of oil in his hand, of the which he did also continually cast, but secretly, into the fire. Then said Christian, what means this? The interpreter answered, this is Christ, who continually with the oil of his grace maintains the work already begun in the heart, by the means of which, notwithstanding that the devil can do, the souls of his people prove gracious still. And in that thou sawest that the man stood behind the wall to maintain the fire, that is to teach thee that it is hard for the tempted to see how this work of grace is maintained in the soul. I saw also that the interpreter took him again by the hand and led him into a pleasant place where was built a stately palace, beautiful to behold, at the sight of which Christian was greatly delighted. He saw also upon the top thereof certain persons walking who were clothed all in gold. Then said Christian, may we go in thither? Then the interpreter took him and led him up toward the door of the palace. And behold, at the door stood a great company of men, as desirous to go in, but durst not. There also sat a man at a little distance from the door, at a table side with a book, and his inkhorn before him, to take the name of him that should enter therein. He saw also that in the doorway stood many men in armor to keep, being resolved to do the men that would enter what hurt and mischief they could. Now was Christian somewhat in a maze. At last, when every man started back for fear of the armed men, Christian saw a man of a very stout countenance come up to the man that sat there to write, saying, set down my name, sir. The which when he had done, he saw the man draw his sword, and put an helmet upon his head, and rush toward the door upon the armed men, who laid upon him with deadly force. But the man, not at all discouraged, fell to cutting and hacking most fiercely. So after he had received and given many wounds to those that attempted to keep him out, he cut his way through them all, and pressed toward into the palace, at which there was a pleasant voice heard from those that were within, even of those that walked upon the top of the palace, saying, come in, eternal glory thou shalt win. So he went in and was clothed with such garments as they. Then Christian smiled and said, I think verily I know the meaning of this. Now said Christian, let me go hence, Nay, stay, said the interpreter, till I have showed thee a little more, and after that thou shalt go on thy way. So he took him by the hand again, and led him into a very dark room, where there sat a man in an iron cage. Now the man, to look on, seemed very sad. He sat with his eyes looking down to the ground, his hands folded together, and he sighed as if he would break his heart. Then said Christian, what means this? At which the interpreter bid him talk with the man. Then said Christian to the man, what art thou? The man answered, I am what I was not once. Christian, what wast thou once? Man, the man said, I was once a fair and flourishing professor, both in mine own eyes and also in the eyes of others. I once was, as I thought, fair for the celestial city, and had then even joy at the thought that I should get thither. Christian, well, but what art thou now? Man, I am now a man of despair, and am shut up in it, as in this iron cage. I cannot get out. Oh, now I cannot. Christian, but how camest thou in this condition? Man, I left off to watch and be sober. I laid the reins upon the neck of my lust. I sinned against the light of the word and the goodness of God. I have grieved the Spirit, and he is gone. I tempted the devil, and he is come to me. I have provoked God to anger, and he has left me. I have so hardened my heart that I cannot repent. Then said Christian to the interpreter, but are there no hopes for such a man as this? Ask him, said the interpreter. Christian, then said the Christian, is there no hope, but you must be kept in the iron cage of despair? Man, no, none at all. Christian, why? The Son of the Blessed is very pitiful. Man, I have crucified him to myself afresh. I have despised his person. I have despised his righteousness. I have counted his blood an unholy thing. I have done despite to the Spirit of grace. Therefore I have shut myself out of all the promises, and there now remains to me nothing but threatenings, dreadful threatenings, fearful threatenings of certain judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour me as an adversary. Christian, for what did you bring yourself into this condition? Man, for the lust, pleasures, and profits of this world, in the enjoyment of which I did then promise myself much delight. But now every one of those things also bite me and gnaw me like a burning worm. Christian, but canst thou not now repent and turn? Man, God hath denied me repentance. His word gives me no encouragement to believe. Yea, himself has shut me up in this iron cage, nor can all the men in the world let me out. O eternity, eternity, how shall I grapple with the misery that I must meet with in eternity? Interpreter. Then said the interpreter to Christian, let this man's misery be remembered by thee, and be an everlasting caution to thee. Christian. Well, said Christian, this is fearful. God help me to watch and be sober, and to pray that I may shun the cause of this man's misery. Sir, is it not time for me to go on my way now? Interpreter. Tarry till I shall show thee one thing more, and then thou shalt go thy way. So he took Christian by the hand again, and led him into a chamber, where there was one rising out of bed. And as he put on his raiment, he shook and trembled. Then said Christian, why doth this man thus tremble? The interpreter then bid him tell to Christian the reason of his so doing. So he began and said, this night, as I was in my sleep, I dreamed, and behold, the heavens grew exceeding black. Also it thundered and lightened in most fearful wise, that it put me into an agony. So I looked up in my dream, and I saw the clouds rack at an unusual rate, upon which I heard a great sound of a trumpet. And I saw also a man sit upon a cloud, attended with the thousands of heaven. They were all in flaming fire. Also the heavens were in a burning flame. I heard then a voice saying, arise, ye dead, and come to judgment. And with that the rocks rent, and the graves opened, and the dead that were therein came forth. Some of them were exceeding glad, and looked upward, and some sought to hide themselves under the mountains. Then I saw the man that sat upon the cloud open the book, and bid the world draw near. Yet there was, by reason of a fierce flame which issued out and came from before him, a convenient distance betwixt him and them, as betwixt the judge and the prisoner at the bar. I heard it also proclaimed to them that attended on the man that sat on the cloud, gather together the tares, the chaff, and stubble, and cast them into the burning lake. And with that the bottomless pit opened, just whereabout I stood, out of the mouth of which there came in an abundant manner smoke and coals of fire, with hideous noises. It was also said to the same person, gather my wheat into the garner. And with that I saw many catched up and carried away into the clouds, but I was left behind. I also sought to hide myself, but I could not, for the man that sat upon the cloud still kept his eye upon me. My sins also came into my mind, and my conscience did accuse me on every side. Upon this I awakened from my sleep. Christian, but what was it that made you so afraid of the sight? Man, why, I thought that the day of judgment was come, and that I was not ready for it. But this frightened me most, that the angels gathered up several and left me behind. Also the pit of hell opened her mouth just where I stood. My conscience too afflicted me, and as I thought, the judge had always his eye upon me, showing indignation in his countenance. Then said the interpreter to Christian, hast thou considered all these things? Christian, yes, and they put me in hope and fear. Interpreter, well, keep all things so in thy mind that they may be as a goad to thy sides, to prick thee forward in the way thou must go. Then Christian began to gird up his loins and address himself to his journey. Then said the interpreter, the Comforter be always with thee, good Christian, to guide thee in the way that leads to the city. So Christian went on his way, saying, here I have seen things rare and profitable, things pleasant, dreadful, things to make me stable. In what I have begun to take in hand, then let me think on them and understand. Wherefore they shewed me was, and let me be thankful, O good interpreter, to thee. And then I'm going to end that there, brothers and sisters. We'll pick up next time in part 3. Until then, keep your eyes on Jesus, brothers and sisters. Your nose in the book, which is the Word of God. And let us embed the Word of God upon the tablets of our heart, so you and I will not sin against God or be deceived. I love you all. Bye-bye.